Hey family, welcome to How Love Works, where we talk about the principles for lasting love. Well family, I want to talk today about the big elephant in the room, the real big elephant in the room. I got a question for you. If I took away the issue or your ability to actually have sex, if I just took that away, you couldn't use sex in your relationship, and I took away the phrase "I love you" in the relationship, then what would you have? What could you do to get a brother to bond with you? What would you do? You can't have sex. I'll even make it even harder. You can't even kiss them. You can't kiss them. You can't have sex. And you can't say "I love you." So what would you do as a woman to encourage, influence, to persuade that young man to give you the keys to his heart? Well, I got some good news and I got some bad news, ladies. Here's the bad news. The bad news is that there is no demand for marriage right now. None. Absolutely none. And the good news is we can influence demand for marriage. We can do what I would consider a yeoman's achievement toward persuading individuals to consider marriage. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, what if you took those three items off the table and you could not use those three items? What would you do? That's the question. So, I guess, what are the triggers, if you will, the bonding triggers? What is it that triggers a man's heart? It makes him want to bond. That's interesting. I want to talk about that with you today. I think that what helps a man, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. You might be shocked because it doesn't take a lot. One of the easiest ways to trigger a man's heart, to get him focused, that men don't even realize themselves, is that men are highly attracted to women who are vulnerable. These are women who's willing to be real, or as I always like to say, since I learned this from the young people, they like it when a woman is 100. And today, because of a lot of the duplicity and a lot of the fake love that's available today, women have a very difficult time with the concept of being vulnerable, because I think it's like betraying the sisterhood. You can't be vulnerable, especially to no man. You can't show, you gotta be strong. Well, as I always say, how's it been working for you? It's not working, is it? That's one of the areas that vulnerability is very, very powerful, and it works on the psyche of 99% of men, because it is so rare to find that quality in a woman. It doesn't matter whether she's black, white, purple, or green. That's what men unconsciously are drawn to, because it's rare. Okay? Now, a lot of times when you're in relationships with a man, you go on your first date, and women rarely, when they have their conversations, their first conversation with a man, they rarely disclose anything in their past that was embarrassing. Rarely, because that's being vulnerable. Most of the time, women like to paint themselves as being the victim, which is a big turnoff. And to be honest, it's an expectation that men, sadly, we expect to hear that story. And so when we hear it, we kind of have a predetermined conduct that we go into after that. We know, in a sense, okay, this is what we're dealing with. She's a victim. Okay, so I'm going to take advantage of her victim mentality, and I'm not really feeling her, no matter how she looks. And that's the problem. And so that's why vulnerability is so rare, because it really touches a man in that area. Because men, we deal with reality every day. And so when we deal with a woman who can deal with reality and put herself in a position where she's being vulnerable and disclosing areas where she is weak, or areas where she is not as skilled, or areas where she has not really performed to a level of her own satisfaction, and she's willing to share that with you, that's very rare. And that tells a man in his mind, I said, wow, I might be a little special. She's being that transparent. That's number one. Another area that seems to bond a man, that a lot of women they tend not to do with men, is they don't, sadly, they don't have the kind of intimate communication that brings a man and a woman to a position where it's like their own personal language. In a sense, what I mean by all of that is this, like my wife and I, when we communicate with one another, okay, we kind of have our own pet phrases. Like, let's say, for instance, I'm in a group of other couples, and I'm discussing something that may be a little bit, from my wife's perspective, a little bit too revealing. Well, we have little code words that we have. And she may say something, and she may interject after she sees a pause in the conversation, and she may say something like, ouch. Now, in my mind, that's a clear indicator. Okay, I need to kind of stop right here. This is not something, this is an area that my wife don't want me to proceed. And see, by having that personal relationship and that level of intimacy that's only shared between she and I, that bonds us even more. That makes it that much more special. You see, so that's number two. And a lot of men and women, they don't ever get to that level. Everything is adversarial. Communication is used like weapons in a warfare where individuals are trying to up one each other, or one up one another. And that's not the purpose of communication. So that's number two. And I think the third and the last one is where I said in a preceding video, is that when it comes to communicating with your man, and you want to encourage bonding, and you want to trigger that thing, what you really want to try to do is, as you are learning who this man is, and I'll even say what one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, said: when people show you who they are, believe them. as you're learning who the individual is who you're spending time with, and you're trying to understand him before he understands you. You're trying to understand before being understood. You're listening. You're asking questions from the perspective you want to learn, not from the perspective you want to use the information later to gain some position of strength or to protect yourself. And if that's been your habit, then that's one of the reasons why you have been receiving what you have been receiving in your relationships. But if you have the mindset that your goal is to learn, and you use communication for that purpose, then as you ask questions, you want to ask questions to find out what is that man's values, what is his principles, what does he find important. You need to ask questions like that, because most men don't get that from women. The average woman, when she's having a relationship with a man for the very first time, she spends too much time talking about her last relationship. Or she spends too much time talking about how bad the world is. Or she spends too much time talking about herself and her career and her achievements. And she thinks that's impressing him somehow. Men don't care about what your achievements are in your career. We don't care. That's what women care about. Men don't. So save all of that, okay, for your girlfriends. But if you're talking to a man and you want to impress a man, then what you want to do is you want to find out about who he is. You want to find out what he believes. You want to find out what he cares about. And then you then take that material and then see, is there any overlap with your value system? Is there any correspondence with your principles? And then if there is, then what you want to do is communicate to that. And that will trigger bonding from that individual man, because that's rare. It doesn't happen anymore. Women don't communicate like that anymore. Then you start influencing those areas. You start speaking to those areas. You inform those areas. You help to persuade that individual toward a journey, a pathway that leads to commitment. But you have to speak to those triggers that he's not aware of, that sets you apart from the herd. Because all the other women, as I said, if you take away the sex, if you take away the kissing, if you take away the phrase "I love you," what do they have? The only thing they have is their inner beauty. And if they don't know how to communicate that inner beauty through their actions, attitudes, and affections, I'm going to tell you, they're going to be they're going to be out. They're going to lose. They might as well stay home. Mature, decent women, they know how to connect without the sex, without the hugging and the kissing, without all of the trappings that the culture says, without all the chemistry that gets in the way. Because at the end of the day, when men and women make that commitment, go and walk down that aisle, get married, if for some reason the 50% of women that go out and file for divorce, 9 times out of 10, it's not because, oh, well, I'm filing for a divorce because this guy is beating me necessarily, or this guy is stealing money from me. No. It's because of those things that you are not, it's because of those things that you are seeking, which is you want affection, and it's not sex. But that's what you gave in the beginning, trying to get them. You want intimacy, and that's normally not sex. But that's what you gave in the beginning to try to get them, right? And these are the problems that become real issues later on in the relationship that cause women to initiate separation and divorce in relationships. So you have to find these triggers when you communicate with the man in your life so that you can have the committed relationship that you want. Because you all know men are the gatekeepers of commitment and women are the gatekeepers of, I guess you could say, sex. I don't want to say the other word. And men, unfortunately, seek the sex and women seek the commitment. But commitment to me is the most important thing. Sex is the outworking of the commitment. But if you are not skilled and you don't know how to use the skill of presentation, the skill of persuasion, the skill of influence, the skill of, you want to use the skill of anticipation, of communication. These are skills of feminine communication. Women used to know how to communicate their needs and their desires and their wants and hopes and dreams to their men without sounding like they were demanding and complaining. They knew how to do it and got what they wanted. Women don't know how to do that now. And so they're scratching their head. But see, if you know how to communicate your needs and your desires and wants without sounding like you're nagging and complaining and demanding, you will get 99.9% of what you want. Because it sounds like it's just my idea. But you know how to do it, and it's not manipulating. You're not lying. You're not trying to steal anything. You're putting all your cards out on the table. It's just how you approach it and how you ask. But if you don't know what you don't know. That's my time. I thank you for yours. God bless you. I catch you on the other side.